we are going to focus on the structure of poetry. The structure is how your poem is built, how it appears on the page. And when I talk about structure, I'm actually referring to the line breaks and the stanzas that you're using in your poems. And I know that we've already talked about line breaks and stanzas. Last week, I think in every poem that we noticed, we said, okay, that's a line break and those are stanzas. And I can already see that in your work. You guys are doing a great job trying out line breaks and practicing stanzas, so good for you. Today's lesson is just kind of focusing on those two elements of poetry. And specifically for me, it's going to be line breaks. But I wanted to show you today what I do when I write poems and how I go back through and purposely make sure that my line breaks are adding to my poem and that my poem is sounding the way that I want it to sound when I add those line breaks in. So today we're going to take a look at one poem with great line breaks and stanzas. You're going to see me write some poetry and demonstrate how I add line breaks in, and then you are off to try today's writing. My sister Kayla, silly, crazy, abnormal, strange, who loves listening to the radio, bugging her sister, sucking up to her parents, who needs mental help, a brain transplant, plastic surgery, who gives kisses, hugs, love occasionally, who fears creepy crawlers, her sister giving her a kiss, bath time, who'd like to see Mickey Mouse, the Hunchback of Notre Dame, Michael Jordan in person, teacher of my god sister Chelsea, student of her big sister, resident of Planet X by Danielle. Go ahead and pause the video and talk about or think about, what do you notice? What do you like about what this writer has done? I challenge you today, maybe you want to be inspired by this poem. Could you write about a sibling or a friend, with their permission, of course? A parent, anybody. Again, make sure that you get their permission to write about them, but then, come up with adjectives that describe them, and then hone in on these categories: loves, needs, gives, fears, who'd like to see, or think of your own categories even better, and then arrange this so that you've got line breaks and stanzas. I love this poem. All right, so let's take a look at a poem that I wrote today just before coming on to video. I was inspired by the snow that is falling outside my window right now, and here's what I wrote. The snow comes down fast, twirling like a ballerina. It flutters in the air until it lands on the ground. The one thing I want to encourage you guys to do when you write poetry or any type of writing is read it again and again and again. I don't think that we read our writing enough. When I write, I will write a line and then I will read that to myself. And then I'll write another line and then I'll read those two lines together. And I keep doing that. And then when I finish my writing, I read it all over again from start to finish. Please do that. Then, when you're done, I want you to look at it just like we did here with our other poems and notice, what do you like about what you've done? So if I go back and look at my poem and start to notice things and notice what I think I did a really good job with, I am going to first say the word twirling. I love that word, and that's exactly what the snow is doing. It's not just falling straight in a straight line from the sky to the ground. It is literally twirling in the air as it falls. I also love that I'm describing the snow or comparing the snow to a ballerina. So I've got a simile in there because I've used the word like. Another thing that I did a really good job with, I think, is my word flutters. I'm watching these snowflakes, and again, they're just kind of moving up and down in the air before they start to slowly come to the ground. They're fluttering. And so I love that I chose that word in my poem. Then what I would do is I would go back and think, okay, what can I do better? How can I make my poetry better? And that is is a hard thing to do sometimes with our own writing. So, you might need help with this. You might need to have a thinking partner with this. But I promise you, the more often you do this with your writing, the easier it will be. Don't beat yourself up about anything. I'm sure you did an amazing job. And if you put effort into your work, it's awesome. But there's always something that we as writers can do to make our writing better. So when I look at my writing and think, how can I make it better? One thing I'm going to say is, okay, I need a title. We've talked about titles. We've also talked about bylines, so I need to add that byline in there. But then I look at this and say, okay, this does not look like a poem. It's missing line breaks. This poem today, I'm only going to focus on line breaks, but I could add stanzas if I wanted to. So here's what I do when I'm working on line breaks. I start with the first line and I read it out loud and I think about what this poem would sound like if I put a break in certain spots of my poem. So for example, I might say, the snow comes down fast. What if I put a line break right here? Then it would read, the snow comes down fast. I don't really like that. I don't like the way that sounds. So let me try a line break somewhere else. What if I put one right here? Then it would be, the snow comes down fast. I kind of like that. I like that. I'm going to keep that in mind. What if I put a line break here? What would it sound like? The snow comes down fast. I kind of like that too, actually. It doesn't sound so bad. So again, you're practicing, you're playing around with where line breaks are and you're reading it to yourself. If it sounds the way you want it to sound, if it has a rhythm to it, then go for it. Put your line break there. But if it doesn't, kind of like what I did here, then move it somewhere else. Line breaks take time. Play around with it. Have fun with it. The first time you do a line break, you may not like where it goes and you're going to have to move it somewhere else. I like where it sounded here, so I'm going to add a line break right there. On line 2, it says, twirling like a ballerina. Okay. I could probably keep this all in one line and it wouldn't sound so bad, but I'm already kind of hearing something in my head and I really like where if I put a line break after twirling, and here's what it would sound like. Twirling like a ballerina. Oh, I like that. I like that. So I might put, and I forgot, I should have a line break here so that it doesn't go, the snow comes down fast twirling. I don't like that. So I need a line break right here. Let's try one right here. So again, reread it. The snow comes down fast, twirling. Ooh, yeah, I like that. I like the way it sounds. And I actually think I'm going to keep this line just the way that it is and probably put a line break right here. Once again, I'm going to read it. The snow comes down fast, twirling like a ballerina. Yes, that sounds good to me. Okay, my next line, it flutters in the air. Yeah, I want to break that up a little bit. I think I'm going to try a line break right here. The snow comes down fast, twirling like a ballerina. It flutters. Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, keep going. I think I'm going to keep these on one line and add a line break here. And going down here until it lands on the ground. I want my poem to end with this dramatic effect. I really want to emphasize these words right here because that's the ending to my poem. So I feel like I want a line break right here. And then I think I'm going to keep these two words together. And then I want each of these words to be on their own line. So boom. And then I'm going to read it. The snow comes down fast, twirling like a ballerina. It flutters in the air until it lands on the ground. I kind of like that. So did you see how I really just kind of played around with things? You know, I said things out loud. If you actually do this line breaks, you might want to use a pencil. That way, if you don't like where it's at when you reread it, you can easily erase it. If you use a pen, that's okay too, but maybe make it light so that if you have to cross it out, you can do that. Again, this is all about testing things out, playing with it, having fun, and most importantly, rereading your work often. All right, so here's what my final draft looks like. All right, let me read it to you. Snow. The snow comes down fast, twirling like a ballerina. It flutters in the air until it lands on the ground. By Mrs. Z. So I applied all of those changes for my rough draft here. You can see how it no longer looks like a paragraph. I've got my line breaks in there. And actually, when I rewrote this as my final draft, I didn't like how lands was on its own. So that's why I've crossed it out and added it back up here. So even though this is my kinda final draft, it still was a draft because I made changes to it, and that's okay. I added my title, I added my byline, and then I also did this here. These are the things that we've talked about so far in poetry, making sure that we have titles and byline, and that poems can be any size, any length, and that we have very specific word choice, adjectives, verbs, and that figurative language. So you might also today want to have this list on your paper so that as you add these things, you can check them off as you do them. All right. Thank you guys for sticking with me. I know this video was a lot longer than normal. There's just so much to say and share about poetry. I couldn't contain it. So thank you. Today, you are going to choose something to write about. Go back to your list. Maybe you're inspired by one of the poems that I shared today and write. Your focus today, though, is on line breaks and stanzas. Be careful, don't just write and be done with it. Really practice those line breaks. Really play around and have fun with where you put your words on your page. Does it have a rhythm? Does it sound the way that you want it to sound? All right. Don't forget to share it and attach it today in today's activity in Seesaw. Take a great picture, record yourself reading it, and we can't wait to see what you do. Before you leave, though, hang on. I have one thing I want to share with you. This is actually a poem written by one of our fellow fourth graders, and it's called Architecture. Have you ever stopped and took a look around you? The buildings, the structures, all built so carefully, planned with creativity by each civilization. Never stopped developing, never stopped designing. Architecture is beautiful. And that is by Jared Rayner. Great job, Jared. I wish that I could show you a copy of this poem. There are great line breaks in here. He's played around with stanzas. It is a well-written piece of poetry, and it's using everything that we were talking about today. So awesome job, Jared. And also, I thought it was kind of a coincidence that he talked about structures, and today I started our lesson talking about the structure of a poem. So I love your poetry, you guys. So keep them coming. Have fun today. Be successful. You are amazing poets.